Well, Pastor Justin Walker, thank you so much for being here with us at CBN News. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, and it's good to talk with you. You're the pastor of Salt and Light Baptist Church in LaGrange, Kentucky. Tell us a
Yep.
little bit about your ministry background, just for people who might not be aware of the work that Salt and Light Baptist Church has done in Kentucky. Talk a little bit about your ministry background, how you got to where you are, and how long you've been serving there.
Sure. Okay. I'll give you the real abbreviated version and say that called in the ministry when I was 16. Didn't know what that meant. Thought I was going to be a musician. Became a youth pastor when I was 19. I did that for 7 years, and then planted Salt and Light with my wife and two other people. So four people total planting a church. And we had this like goal of not, we called it sheep swapping. We didn't want to swap sheep. Like we
Mm,
wanted to go find lost people who needed Jesus and tell them about Christ. And so we started with four people and had a tiny church for about 10 years. And then my wife got sick. When I say tiny church, I mean, it was great. It was a great church, but it was like, 15 to 30 people on a given Sunday. And it was that way for a decade. And then my wife got sick with cancer and she passed away. And simultaneously, the church skyrocketed in growth. And we went from a 20-person church to a 400-person church in the span of about a year. And so
wow.
just like, for our perspective, it was like, I mean, I've got all this emotional trauma going on. And then, it's like every Sunday there's 10 new families in church. And, I'll never forget the days of like, we still had like old altar call membership ways back then because we were coming from such a small church. So we'd have like an altar call at the end of service and there'd be like four, five, six families come up to come join the church and people getting bad. We'd never seen it before. I remember, we had this open baptism for the first time. We'd always scheduled baptisms because we were so small. And so we finally were like, why are we doing that? Like, let's just say if you want to be baptized, come up. The first time we did that, it was on the Easter Sunday and a dozen people got baptized that Sunday. And like for us, it was like revival, this big
Wow.
revival
Yeah.
moment. Like 12 people got baptized this Sunday. So church grew and we had to move. And so we were outgrown that building for 100 people. We had, uh, you know, 300, 400 people coming on Sunday. We couldn't do like all the activities we were trying to do as a church. We kept having to go like outside of the church to go do them, which is great on one hand, but it just made logistical problems. So we ended up moving, got a great building we're working on now. It's an old horse auction, like a big horse auction place. Well, it was back in the 80s. Now it's our church. And so we're working on buying that and remodeling that and all of those things all at once.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things you're remodeling it to, and this is how I got connected with you and really got on my radar, is the school that you're starting. So there's a tuition-free school, K through
Mhm.
6, that Salt and Light has just launched. Now, one, obviously, people are going to hear tuition free and they're going to wonder how is that possible. But talk a little bit about the idea, the vision for a school. Where was that born out of for you?
Yeah, I had this crazy revelation that again kind of stemmed from, I didn't realize it at first, but it really stemmed from my wife passing. I
Mm.
used to say that we homeschooled, and then my wife passed, and now I realize, oh, my wife homeschooled. And so was not involved the way that, I guess I would have thought of, but, I was working full time. And anyways, that started this journey of me getting in my own children's education and it really was like a simultaneous thing that happened. We had a group in the church. We'd grown. We had a group coming to the church who wanted to start a school. Now they just wanted to start a private school, so a tuition based private school. And then they came to the church and they said, "Hey, would you all want to be interested in partnering with us?" And again, here I am dealing with emotional things and with my wife passing and trying to homeschool my kids. And I was like, that's just not the mission of our church. We're not interested. So I kind of, pushed it off at first. And then just things were happening. There's one example of that. Like I took my daughter to the library. I normally didn't take my kids to the library. My wife did that. But now here I am taking my daughter to the library to try to find some books for her to read. And it was 1st of June. And they're pushing all of these like LGBTQ books on my daughter in the public library. And I was so upset and I just made this like personal post on Facebook. I took a picture of the books they were trying to give my it was like my 11-year-old daughter. They're trying to give her these books and I was so upset at that. I was like standing right there and they're pushing them on her. And so I took a picture of those and I posted them on Facebook and I said, shame on you, library, public library, for offering these books to my daughter. We won't be back. That's all I said. Like, we won't be back. And just like this huge firestorm. And that was like this eye-opening moment of like, oh man, this is a big deal. So it started like a library, and then the school came back and approached us again. And I'm just having this revelation because now I'm involved in my kids' education of like this great need that is among us. And then the more I start looking, the more I realize like there's a mission field in our own backyard that the average church right now is not involved in. And that mission field is 50 million American children that are going to public
Mm.
schools every day, where things like what just happened to my daughter in the library are happening all day long. And here I am, the pastor of the church, supposed to be a community leader. And what are we doing about this? What is it? No one's even talking about it. No one's even saying it. I mean, we're sort of say things like if we get mad about some book that's in the library or some artwork they put up, or we'll say something about one thing, but nobody's saying something about the huge problem of 50 million kids who go to that every single day, and they have to be subjected to that every single day. And
Mm.
so there you go. There's like an abbreviated version of a probably longer story. But that's how it like initially started. And then so we just ended up partnering with this group from our church that wanted to start a school. And then that gets into the, now how do we get to this point of like tuition free? Like why did, you're not asking this question, but here I am saying it, like, why did we decide to go tuition free and not just charge tuition?
Yeah.
That's the typical model, right? Like you would just say, oh, so the answer to that question that I've just posed to myself is, uh, it goes like this. We want to be ministry. We
Mm.
are ministry.
Yeah.
And we, first of all, we have to ask ourselves the question, if private education that's charging for tuition is the fix to the 50 million American students, if that really is the help, then like why aren't we seeing more? Like, why is that not helping? We've got 50 years of these kind of problems happening in our public schools. So why is private schooling not seeming to be the fix? Like, why is that not just natural cause and effect? That should be causing something. And of course, one of the huge factors is, I'll use myself as an example. Here I am with 6 children, 5 of them still in the house. My wife has passed, so now I'm trying to figure all of that out. And we start talking about the school, and the first thing that was said was, for us to open a school, the cost is about $10,000 per child per year, base minimum, if we want to pay for those children. So now extrapolate those numbers and say, okay, well, you're going to have 100 children in your school. Well, 100 children at 10,000 apiece. You start to see these numbers that are climbing, which I know paints a picture of a problem on the other side of how do you pay for all that. But I'm just saying from an individual side. So 5 kids at a private school at $10,000 apiece, that's $50,000 a year in education. I don't have that. I pastor a church. So I would say the average American person, first and foremost, looks at public education because they probably have to.
Mm.
And so this starts to bear this like birth this idea of how does anyone fix that? And of course, the answer to that becomes, well, the church. There was this huge question of like, well, why, how come it has to be tuition free to be ministry? And so I like to give this little example. I say, imagine with me that you have a, a pregnancy resource center, and a mom comes in, she's in crisis pregnancy, she's considering an abortion, and the pregnancy resource center says, hey, we want to give you an ultrasound. We have an ultrasound machine. Can we give you an ultrasound so you can hear that baby's heartbeat? Because that changes a mother's mind. And mom says, yeah, I'll do it. And they say, good. And they hand her a piece of paper and they say that'll be $1,200. Now, my first grandbaby was just born last night at 7 p.m. And so I know for a fact that my daughter's ultrasound was $1,200.
Mm.
Now that's what we paid for her to have an ultrasound was $1,200. And so you could say, well, everybody charges $1,200. But if a woman's in crisis pregnancy and she's considering an abortion, and that pregnancy resource center says, give us $1,200 so we can try to convince you to save that baby. When did we break and it stopped becoming ministry? And that's the whole point here is we want this to be a ministry. This is an outreach. And there's this other part that everyone says, well, how do you get that much money? How do you get that much money for a tuition free school? And the answer I've continued to point out is, you know, you look at the church. This is what the church has done, like through its whole history. We don't charge ticket prices for people to come in on Sunday. Freely we've received and freely we give. So I've just encouraged everyone to take the word tuition and replace it with donation. It's a donation based. So it's tuition free. Where does that money come from? It's not like we're having volunteer teachers and we're not paying people or paying staff. It's that we're taking up donations to then pay that staff, pay those teachers, buy that curriculum. And we've done it. We've successfully launched. So it's not just a pipe dream at this point. We've launched.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, hearing your story, and it's cool to see the way that the Lord has used your personal experience to extrapolate that out into something to serve the community. It just reminded me of that saying that necessity is the mother of invention. And I think as Christians,
Mm-hmm.
we have a biblical version of that, which is God works together all things for the good of those who love him, right? And I think that's really what we've seen happen with your story is you saw a need in your own
Mm-hmm.
life. And you figured, I'm not alone in this. There are other parents, other kids who are experiencing this need as well. And then the other thing that I thought is, you mentioned crisis pregnancy centers. And obviously, many of them are not charging you anything, right? If you're going in and you need help. And that's a very pro-life thing. And I think what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing with this school is also an extension of that. It's a pro-life thing, right? You're continuing to serve the community after the point of birth. Because I think a lot of times people say, well, the church is there to make sure you don't have an abortion and that the child is brought into this world, but they're not there to
Mm-hmm.
continue necessarily caring for that child after. And I don't think that's
Mm-hmm.
always a fair criticism at all.
Right.
But I think the work that Salt and Light is doing really shows that the church wants to be part of life from natural birth to natural death. Um,
Yeah.
so talk a little bit about some of how it worked logistically to launch this school because you did it incredibly fast.
6 months. Yeah, we announced, we made the agreement. So the first thing you said logistically. So logistically, the first thing that we had to do was get everybody on the same page.
Yeah,
And that was difficult because the moment that you say tuition free, everybody's minds are, you know,
it's a
every
scary thing to
direction.
hear.
Yeah, like how are you going to do that? Because again,
Right.
now we have to say not $10,000 per student for my kids for $50,000. We're saying our original goal was 150 students, and so where do you raise $1.5 million to open a school? And then we take that even further and we say, oh yeah, and we want to do it this September, this upcoming September. So I mean, it was like double. So we had to get everybody on the same page to understand first of all the mission, like the whole mission. And the whole mission that we have, and well, let me just say it that way. The whole mission that we have is to open the school as an inspiration for other schools and other churches. We want to be a beacon of light. Our name is salt and light. We want to be that. If the salt loses its saltiness, what good is it? That's what Jesus said. And he said, who lights a light and then puts it under a basket, but you put it in the middle of the house so that the whole room is lit up. And that's who we are. We're a city on a hill. We're salt and light, and we want to be that so that other churches can do the same thing. And so we had to get everybody on that. Like we have to. There's a lady right now I'm working with, and she constantly says, like, we don't want to lose sight of the forest for the tree. So yes, we've opened up the school, but I'm saying logistically to get everybody there, we had to understand that this is bigger than one church starting one school. We want to start a lot of schools, and not just us start a lot of schools. We want to see the church at large rallied around this and say, oh, this is possible. We can do this. I have this crazy vision. I love to say it this way, that I would love to see in 20 years that it would be the strange thing if you went into a church and they didn't have a school. That
Hmm.
you'd like go, that like visitor comes into a church and they're like, oh, you don't have a school? Like we would love to see it like that. Like churches across America saying we can open up a school. Maybe they can't open K through 12. We're ambitious. Maybe they open up K through 3. Maybe they open up a middle school. Maybe there's one that opens up a high school. They can look at their demographics. But to say that the church would recognize the need and get behind it. So logistically get everybody involved. Once we had everybody involved, then we've got to announce it to our church and tell our church this is what we're doing, and keep them from pure panic, which that was again, interesting. And then we had to actually start raising some money. And so we did that. We had this big, we called it a vision tour, and we invited everybody we could from the community to come in and to see what we were doing, how we were going to build out the church, and we put it into phases. So we have in the church phase one, then we're going to remodel an exterior building. That's phase two. Then phase three, we want to build a standalone school up on the hill. We've got some property there that we're trying to get. So we're going to build a standalone school and get we wanted everybody to catch that vision. And then when they came back inside, then we cast the vision for phase four, which is a foundation that will help other churches to do the same thing. So when other churches 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now go, how in the world do you do that? We can say, hey, not only do we have some advice, but we have some help. Like we can offer some help to other churches and help this to spread. And so that we can reach into that 50 million American students whose parents feel like, well, we don't have another option. Mom and dad have to work. Homeschooling is not an option. Private school is too expensive. So what's our option? Well, now the church is hopefully going to step in and be that option.
Yeah, I think this poses an important question about the purpose of the church, right? I think so often that we have these debates: is the church just for us? Is it just for
Mm,
the internal group of believers and discipleship, or is it an evangelistic tool? Is it supposed to be out and serving the community? Is it supposed to be an opportunity for non-believers to come in and be part of what we're doing so that they can experience the love of Jesus within that
amen.
church community? Talk
Mhm.
a little bit about that. Is this something that's open to the public? How do you work with the public? And because you're going to have people who are not believers bringing their kids into a school where obviously they're going to be surrounded by other believers and Christian content.
Amen. Yes, you said it really great there. So our school, shockingly, not only are we tuition free, but we are open to the public. So not only are we not closed off to just our church, like we went and found some other schools that are tuition free, but they're closed off to their church. So you have to be a church member of this church. The church sponsors it. The church people pay for it, which is great. We love that model. We're great with that. But we wanted this to be a mission. We wanted a ministry. We wanted to be involved in this ministry and this mission. And so for us, open to the public. You do not have to be a member of our church. And that's purposeful. That's direct. And you do not have to have, here's another shocking fact. We do not make our students sign a statement of faith that they are believers. If you were to, like my son is in a consortium right now. So he goes to a local school here, like kind of a hybrid school, and he has to sign and I have to sign a statement of faith that says this is what we believe before we can come here. Our school is different in that, yes, we have a statement of faith, and yes, mom and dad sign it, and the kids who are old enough, they sign it. But our statement of faith says this is what we believe. So ours is First Principles Academy. So First Principles Academy holds these beliefs, and this is what we will be teaching your children. And we want you to know from the upfront when you come here, we believe that the huge problem in our country and what we're seeing with depression and anxiety and many of the social problems that we're seeing stem from lack of Christ at the center of our education. So we have a goal of putting Christ at the center of our education. So there is a part of this that goes a little deeper than there's the community need, yes, but there's the need to bring Christ into our education. And so we want that first and foremost. And we want mom and dad to know, and we want students to know that this is what we're going to be teaching. So our grand hope is that here's a family that little Johnny comes to school. Little Johnny hears the gospel in his math class, his English class, his history class. He takes a Bible class and so on. And Johnny says, I believe in Jesus as my savior. And not only do we have a chapel service at our school, but we've got kids getting baptized at our chapel service. And we've
Mhm.
got families coming. I couldn't tee off on it for too long, but I could just say that, I was 13 years old, wanted to be baptized. And the end result of that was me, my two brothers, and my brother's girlfriend all baptized on the same day because one guy said, hey, I want to go get baptized. We would love to see that happen at our school, that little Johnny gets baptized, but then mom and dad come and they get baptized. And
Yeah.
so definitely an evangelistic outreach, and we can't be evangelistic if we close off to non-believers. Now that raises this question. Everybody says, okay, well then is it the Wild West? Is anything and everything allowed? And then do you just have the same thing that you had at a public school setting? And the answer is absolutely not. We have a code of conduct that says this is our statement of faith, and this is our code of conduct. So you're not allowed to come in here and bring the ideologies from a worldly setting into here. You're coming and joining with what we're doing. And we have already had one conflict with that. We had a family who came, we gave them our statement of belief. We said, this is what we believe. This is what we're going to be teaching your children. Mom refused to sign it and said, no, we'll have to talk about that later. And we said, well, no, we're talking about that right now. Like, this is the time. And she wouldn't sign it. So they didn't enroll in the school. And I think that's the whole thing that I keep trying to remind people too, is like, there is enrollment. Like, we, just like any other place, we have a right to say, no, you're not going to do that here. So yeah, there's going to be times that I'm sure there's going to be a student that's going to give us trouble, and suspensions or expulsions are probably going to happen. And we would hate those things, but I'm sure that that's all going to be a part of it. We're still a school.
Yeah.
And so we get to operate in that same manner that a school gets to operate. You can't just come in and have a free for all at any other school. You don't get to do that at our school. I hope that makes sense the way I said that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Look, for people, Justin, who want to either learn more about the school, or they want to maybe donate to this cause, right? They want to be a part of this vision. Where can they
Mhm.
go to get more information about the work that Salt and Light Baptist Church is doing?
Yeah, you can go to saltandlightbaptist.org/school. So saltandlightbaptist.org/school. And then you can find all the information about the school. There's ways to give. There's contact information if somebody wants to be a part of it, if they want to help out, even if it's at a distance. And we love testimonies too. We already know of two other schools that have heard of what we've done, or two other churches, I should say, that have heard of what we've done, and they're doing the same. One is in Florida
Wow.
and one is in Georgia. That after they've heard what we've done, the one in Florida has already voted, their elders have already voted on it. They didn't start this September, but they're working at their church to start next September. And that is the goal. We want to see that spread far and wide. So testimonies are great too.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Look, CBN, we're a Christian audience. It's a praying audience too. So how can we be praying for your church and for the school as you step into this new ministry?
Well, yes. One, you can pray for our protection. We have upset the apple cart in many ways, as you can probably imagine. So, there's everything from, people feeling personally attacked to, those who feel like we're attacking their teachers and their friends, which we're not. We understand public schools are going to be there, and we want to be a friend to them, just like Jesus was a friend to us. So just pray for our protection in that way, and also for the strength for our teachers who are stepping out and doing something that is really it's different, and so we have a. I've been saying it's like those who stepped on the Mayflower, like it took a special breed of people to step on the Mayflower. So I would say praying for our teachers to be able to educate and to be able to withstand the, probably pushback and things that they're feeling from a personal level. And then also for our students, that was a big leap for parents to say, we're not going to go to this, known school, but we're going to come over here in this pioneering year, or even in these pioneering couple of years as we get started. So pray for those students that they'll be able to have the fortitude to stick it out, and that we'll have a good testimony. Certainly the enemy loves to throw his fiery darts, and he's roaming to and fro, seeking whom he may devour. And I think when you step out in big ways for the Lord, you also step out you're kind of stepping onto the target.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so protection and fortitude and strength for our teachers and our students and our parents would be, I think, first and foremost.